There are moments in life when the balance shifts so violently that even the quietest truths become thunder. For so long, things felt one-sided. The lies, the manipulation, the games played behind curtains. It all built like static in the air, unseen yet heavy. Then the secret surfaced. Not through rage or vengeance, but through exposure so precise that it cut deeper than confrontation ever could. It wasn't an argument. It was revelation. What made it terrifying wasn't the truth itself, but what stood behind it. The presence that seemed to shield you without needing words. The same people who once whispered now flinched at your silence. They sensed something had changed. The protector was not flesh and bone, but energy, an unseen force that made deceit tremble. The secret's exposure didn't destroy you. It crowned you. Every hidden intention that once threatened your peace now bowed before something unexplainable. When truth finally emerged, it didn't come dressed in drama. It arrived softly, but the air changed with it. People who built illusions felt the ground shift beneath them. The protector wasn't loud. It was presence, conviction, and timing. Life has a strange way of defending those aligned with truth. It waits until deception overplays its hand, then steps in quietly, correcting the balance. Those who thought they had you cornered realized too late that protection doesn't always look divine. It looks strategic. Every move they made was already anticipated. Every lie they crafted became the evidence of their downfall. The terrifying part wasn't that you survived. It was that you seemed untouchable while everything else fell apart. The protector didn't fight for you. It operated through you. Confidence replaced fear, clarity replaced chaos. The secret that was meant to destroy ended up being the weapon that revealed your invincibility. The world reacts differently to truth that carries no vengeance. There's a purity to it, a kind of power that doesn't need defense. When the mask fell, everyone felt it. The protector wasn't something external. It lived in stillness, in restraint, in the refusal to be reactive. That's what unsettled everyone. They expected you to fight, to plead, to justify. Instead, you observed. You let silence tell the story. That calmness was terrifying because it reflected a higher understanding, a kind that cannot be manipulated. The protector was discipline forged through betrayal, awareness molded from disappointment. When you stopped responding emotionally, the universe started moving strategically. That's when protection revealed itself, not as divine coincidence, but as alignment. Those who tried to sabotage you discovered that truth has a way of circling back with interest. The exposure wasn't revenge. It was inevitability, and the protector ensured no one left unaccountable. Exposure has a rhythm. It begins with whispers, then accelerates through tension, and ends in silence so sharp it cuts the air. What once hid in shadows was now center stage. Every false alliance, every strategic deceit, every quiet manipulation, it all surfaced. But what unsettled people most was how calm you remained. It was the calm of someone who knows forces beyond perception are in motion. The protector didn't roar, it rearranged. Those who wronged you started facing patterns they once used against others. That's how life restores balance. It mirrors behavior until lessons are learned. You didn't need to lift a finger. The same web they spun became their own confinement. The protector didn't operate on anger but on law, the kind that punishes arrogance through consequence. The secret's exposure was not your doing. It was simply time correcting what humans refuse to. When certain truths unfold, they don't just shock people, they rearrange reality. Everyone involved feels the shift. Those who spoke lies begin to stumble over their own stories. The audience they once entertained now watches in confusion. And through it all, you stay composed, no longer needing validation. That composure came from understanding that protection isn't about being saved. It's about being seen clearly by life itself. Every attack became instruction. Every betrayal became blueprint. The protector had been sculpting your awareness all along. The people who thought they could break you didn't realize they were preparing you for self-mastery. And when mastery arrived, it carried consequences. Energy doesn't lie. It returns what it receives, amplified. The secret was never about what they hid. It was about what you became while they were busy hiding it. And when that transformation surfaced, it terrified everyone who once underestimated your endurance. The most unnerving thing for those who plotted your downfall was realizing their power never came from strength. It came from your permission. Once that permission was withdrawn, they lost everything. The protector revealed itself in the silence that followed, in the way life began exposing truths without your involvement. People who once believed falsehood started questioning their own loyalty. That's how protection works. It doesn't need to fight, it shifts perspective. Those who once stood against you found themselves confused, unable to explain why their confidence vanished. It wasn't guilt, it was exposure. The energy they once controlled no longer responded. The protector had cut the signal. You no longer played defense because you became the mirror. The secret's exposure became the turning point. A moment when every manipulator met their own reflection, and it was unbearable to face. There's a psychological terror that comes from being seen fully. Those who live through deception rely on invisibility. The moment they're recognized, the performance ends. That's what happened. The protector stripped away illusion without force. It didn't destroy, it revealed. You watched people unravel, not because you attacked, but because they couldn't maintain the lie under the weight of awareness. The truth didn't humiliate them, it exposed their fragility. People fear exposure not because of punishment, but because of perception. Once others see behind the act, the power dynamic dissolves. The protector's role wasn't vengeance, it was revelation. It made sure truth didn't just surface, it stayed. The fear that followed was proof of how much deceit depends on ignorance. And once ignorance was gone, all that remained was truth. Cold, steady, unshakable. The protector didn't defend, it redefined. The protector operates in ways logic can't explain. It's the force that shows up when you've stopped begging for justice. It's what enters when you stop chasing closure and start trusting consequence. Every manipulator underestimates timing, and timing is the protector's language. It moves quietly but perfectly. Those who betrayed trust never expect the moment truth arrives. It doesn't knock, it floods. The fear that follows isn't from exposure itself, but from realizing they can't undo what's been seen. That's how protection feels. It doesn't scream vengeance. It whispers inevitability. The secret's exposure wasn't loud because truth doesn't need audience. It just needs patience. When the protector intervenes, everything that once stood against you collapses naturally. Their guilt becomes their teacher. Their silence becomes their confession. That's the kind of protection no power can compete with, the kind that doesn't just save, it educates. After exposure, peace takes on a different tone. It's not soft, it's sovereign. You carry yourself differently. The fear that once guided your decisions has turned into discernment. You no longer chase safety because you embody it. That's the aftermath of protection, clarity. Those who once manipulated your kindness now avoid your eyes. It's not that you're untouchable. It's that their deceit can't breathe near your awareness. The protector changed your frequency. You learned how to move without explaining, how to sense deception before it forms, how to trust energy more than intention. And the world adjusts to that. People act differently, speak differently, think twice before approaching. That's not fear of you. It's respect for the energy that stands behind you. The secret's exposure wasn't an ending, it was a beginning of authority. The protector didn't arrive, it awoke through you. Exposure doesn't always come through confrontation. It often happens through time. The truth doesn't rip masks off, it makes them unnecessary. Pretenses dissolve when the performance no longer earns applause. Those who lived behind facades began to notice something subtle. Their tricks no longer worked. The charm felt heavy, the excuses repetitive, the smiles forced. The audience had grown quiet because awareness doesn't entertain. Masks dissolve when someone stops reacting. The power they once drew from manipulation evaporated because the energy feeding it disappeared. What was once convincing now feels empty. You didn't expose them by attacking, you simply outgrew the illusion. That's what made it powerful. Lies decay when the truth stands still long enough. Every deceit, every projection, every false gesture, melting quietly under the heat of reality. Masks don't fall dramatically, they fade through irrelevance. And the moment the act loses meaning, the performer loses control. Once illusions lose purpose, they begin to crumble. At first, the shift is invisible. The pretender still laughs, still charms, still mimics sincerity, but awareness changes how you see everything. Their tone feels rehearsed, their words predictable. Nothing about them surprises anymore. That's how exposure works, not through discovery, but through recognition. Masks dissolve when people stop believing in them. The deceiver doesn't notice at first. They keep performing, unaware that the crowd has already left. That's when desperation begins. Every manipulation feels louder, every lie more obvious. The silence of indifference becomes unbearable. The irony is that you never needed revenge. Their act punishes itself. When falsehood meets authenticity, decay starts immediately. Masks cannot survive in the presence of truth because truth doesn't argue. It just waits. Every moment spent pretending becomes heavy, suffocating. Eventually, even the deceiver can't breathe under their own creation. That's how illusions die, quietly, without applause. The human mind can only sustain lies through validation. Once the source of validation vanishes, the mask starts slipping from within. The person wearing it begins to feel the weight of pretending. What used to impress now feels exhausting. Awareness makes deception too difficult to maintain. When someone learns to see through performance, pretense becomes impossible. Every manipulative gesture is dissected before it lands. That's why masks dissolve instead of falling. They can't survive awareness. You didn't destroy their illusion, you made it irrelevant. Their words no longer carry meaning, because the intent is visible behind them. What's terrifying for the deceiver is that they can't hide from themselves anymore. Awareness is a mirror that never shatters. Once held up long enough, it forces the pretender to see their reflection, raw and unfiltered. No accusation could wound deeper than that. Masks melt when lies become heavier than silence. There's a difference between unmasking and dissolving. Unmasking feels violent. Someone rips away the cover, leaving the truth exposed. Dissolving, though, is more elegant. It's awareness doing what confrontation never could. The pretender's identity slowly loses coherence. Their stories contradict, their motives blur, their composure fades. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through repetition. Every inconsistency erodes credibility. People stop trusting, stop responding, stop engaging. The deceiver feels the isolation but doesn't understand it yet. That's how dissolution works. It isolates without words. The lie decays while the truth grows heavier. You don't have to lift a hand. The energy around you does it for you. The pretender doesn't even realize their collapse has begun until it's too late. By the time they sense the shift, the mask no longer fits. And when awareness fully enters the room, there's nowhere left to hide. Truth doesn't fight, it absorbs. That's why deception never stands a chance in its presence. The mask dissolves because it can't coexist with awareness. The person behind it becomes transparent, not through exposure, but through exhaustion. Pretending requires effort, and effort burns energy. Once energy runs out, authenticity reveals itself, whether beautiful or ugly. You watch this happen slowly. The same people who once seemed confident began to falter. Their eyes darted more, their words stretched thinner. You didn't need to confront, you only needed patience. The truth is patient. It waits for illusion to tire itself out. The masks dissolve not because you exposed them, but because they couldn't sustain the lie in front of clarity. That's how power changes hands. Not through domination, but through endurance. Eventually, pretense burns itself out. And what's left after the fire is always cleaner, quieter, undeniable. Masks don't survive when someone stops feeding their ego. Manipulators depend on reaction, on emotion, on constant engagement. When you withdrew your energy, their identity began to weaken. It's strange how silence dismantles deception faster than confrontation. The pretender doesn't know how to function without attention. They keep trying to provoke, to lure, to draw you back into chaos. But your detachment became their undoing. They needed your belief to validate the mask, and when it disappeared, so did their confidence. Lies require an audience, truth needs none. That's why masks dissolve. They aren't destroyed, they become useless. The person who built their self, worth around illusion, eventually faces the emptiness beneath it. That's when fear sets in. The mirror becomes their enemy, because it reflects the reality they've avoided. You didn't punish them. Awareness did. And awareness never stops once it begins unraveling what's false. The most painful collapse happens internally. No one sees it, but it changes everything. The deceiver starts losing alignment with their own act. They tell one version of a story and forget the last. They use old tricks on new people, unaware the charm has expired. The world begins to mirror their deceit back at them. Failed plans, fractured relationships, fading respect. That's not coincidence, it's consequence. The mask dissolves when life stops cooperating with delusion. You become witness, not participant. Watching from a distance, you see how truth doesn't seek revenge, it enforces balance. Every lie carries an expiration date, and awareness speeds it up. The person behind the mask feels exposed without ever being accused. Their own conscience becomes unbearable company. That's the collapse no one talks about. The moment deceit runs out of disguise and has to face itself. That's how dissolution feels. Silent, inevitable, absolute. Once the illusion breaks, the world reacts differently. People who once believed the facade start pulling away. Energy moves instinctively toward truth and recoils from deception. It's natural law. You didn't have to explain the truth. It revealed itself through contrast. The calm of awareness makes chaos visible. The deceiver's charm loses color against your composure. That's when realization hits them hardest. Not that they've been exposed, but that their old ways no longer work. It's not rejection they fear, it's irrelevance. The world doesn't revolve around illusion anymore, and the performer can't bear the quiet. When the mask dissolves, what remains is self-confrontation. For those who built identity through manipulation, it feels like death. You didn't kill anything. You just stopped pretending not to see. And when truth stands still long enough, pretense dissolves naturally, leaving only what's real. Awareness doesn't destroy people. It restores order. The mask's purpose was survival, but survival built on illusion always collapses. Once awareness enters, there's no going back. The deceiver senses this before anyone else. Every attempt to rebuild the facade feels forced. Every lie sounds hollow even to their own ears. You don't need to speak. Their reaction tells the story. The dissolution of masks isn't punishment, it's purification. The air clears, the energy resets, the noise fades. You don't carry resentment because you understand the cycle. Truth always wins, not through aggression, but through exposure. Those who rely on deceit live in borrowed time, and when time calls the debt, no defense stands. The moment self-awareness meets deception, everything fake begins to rot. It's nature's law. The unreal cannot survive recognition. Truth never enters like a storm. It arrives like a shadow at first, quiet and still, but once it settles, nothing remains untouched. The lies that once shaped perception start losing grip, not through confrontation but through correction. Truth does not mock those who lied. It teaches them through consequence. The correction doesn't scream, it whispers in ways that echo for years. People who twisted reality begin to face themselves in reflections that won't bend anymore. Their actions start to contradict their words. What once looked like confidence now resembles panic. Truth is a mirror that never flatters, and once it's placed before someone, the image it reflects cannot be denied. No argument can outlast it. That's why the awakening is brutal, because correction carries no sympathy. The false narrative collapses not with noise, but with the weight of undeniable reality. Correction doesn't care about pride. It's not about punishment. It's about balance. When truth finally moves through the room, the air changes. The people who lived in deception sense the shift first. Their rhythm falters, their control weakens. It's not that they're attacked. It's that they can no longer manipulate the environment that once hid their flaws. Truth strips away illusion layer by layer until only authenticity remains. That's its nature. It doesn't humiliate, it reveals. It doesn't destroy, it reorders. You begin to notice that reality never rushes. It waits until illusion becomes heavy enough to collapse on its own. Correction is patient but precise. And when it finally lands, there's no debate left to have. Truth doesn't argue, it absorbs falsehood until there's nothing left to feed on. That's why it's feared. Because it doesn't fight, it simply outlasts. When the truth begins its work, it doesn't shout accusations. It lets evidence speak. Words lose power when consistency disappears. The liars feel it first in their own contradictions. The stories they built begin to crumble under their own weight. That's the first stage of correction, exposure through clarity. The truth doesn't mock, because it doesn't need validation. It lets the false destroy itself. That's the quiet vengeance of reality. The ones who deceived thought they could rewrite outcomes, but truth never negotiates with pretense. Every lie carried a timestamp. Every manipulation came with an expiration date. Now the expiration has arrived. Correction begins as discomfort, grows into isolation, and ends in reflection. No one can fight it because truth doesn't play by human ego. It plays by universal law. And once it activates, even silence begins to sound like confession. What makes truth terrifying is not its sharpness, but its precision. It doesn't strike randomly. It targets exactly where the illusion was strongest. Those who spent their lives pretending are corrected through exposure to what they denied most. The manipulator who thrived on lies faces transparency. The narcissist who lived for control faces freedom they can't handle. The deceiver who built on vanity faces reflection without flattery. Truth corrects by aligning outcomes with intent. Every hidden motive, every fake smile, every false apology is rebalanced through consequence. That's the nature of correction. It mirrors action, not emotion. You start to see how fair reality really is. It never punishes, it recalibrates. Every imbalance eventually finds its counterweight. The correction doesn't feel cruel until it's deserved. That's why truth is feared by those who built empires on illusion. It gives back exactly what was invested. Correction doesn't require witnesses. Truth doesn't need to be believed to be real. While people argue, deny, or distort, truth continues working quietly beneath their noise. You see it in timing, in patterns, in energy that starts rearranging itself. People who lived dishonestly begin to lose their footing. They mistake it for bad luck, but it's correction unfolding. Truth never attacks directly, it removes what no longer aligns. Relationships fade, opportunities dissolve, lies lose oxygen. Correction feels painful only to those who resist it. To those who accept it, it feels like peace returning. You learn that silence often carries more justice than confrontation ever could, because when truth moves, it needs no defense. It already is the defense. Correction doesn't humiliate the guilty, it humbles them. It makes them face reality without disguise. No revenge required, no effort needed. The correction completes itself. Truth dismantles illusions by giving people exactly what they demanded: proof. Those who denied reality find themselves living in contradiction until they break. Correction doesn't rush, it makes people see what they created. Every manipulative tactic, every dishonest moment, every betrayal comes back, not as punishment, but as reflection. That's the power of truth. It mirrors intention perfectly. When the liar sees their own lie reflected in life, they finally understand cause and effect. You watch it unfold with no bitterness, because correction doesn't need your involvement. It's self-sustaining. The more someone tries to outrun it, the faster it catches them. Truth doesn't chase, it arrives. You stop needing closure because you realize closure is automatic. Nothing false survives in truth's gravity. The correction might look cruel, but it's the most honest justice that exists. One that doesn't mock, only aligns. Correction becomes terrifying when silence joins it. There's no yelling, no spectacle. Just the weight of truth pressing down until it becomes undeniable. That's when people start crumbling. They can't joke their way out, can't manipulate perception, can't hide behind charm. The truth doesn't care about charisma, it only recognizes integrity. The deceiver begins to unravel quietly. They say less, they show less, because pretending has become unbearable. The correction is psychological, it strips illusion from identity. Once that happens, every false layer begins to dissolve. The mask becomes too heavy to wear. You see it in their eyes. The recognition that the truth they denied has now become their only teacher. It's not punishment, it's transformation through exposure. And while others may pity them, you see the beauty in it. Correction through truth is not cruelty, it's rebirth disguised as consequence. When correction takes hold, even time moves differently. The days feel slower for those who fought the truth. Their own choices start returning in fragments. Conversations they twisted resurface in new contexts. Lies they told start echoing back through other mouths. That's how correction works. It multiplies truth until denial becomes impossible. People call it karma, but it's simpler than that. It's physics. Every falsehood creates distortion, and truth corrects distortion through repetition until alignment is restored. Isn't it fascinating how they tried to dim your light, only to find themselves blinded by your brilliance? Let's explore the delicious irony of how their attempts to silence you became the very amplifier of your voice. You see, in their desperate effort to suppress your truth, they forgot one crucial detail. Pressure doesn't always crush things. Sometimes it creates diamonds. Think back to those moments when they thought they had you cornered, their whispers spreading like poison through the corridors of your life. Every raised eyebrow, every interrupted sentence, every accidental exclusion, all carefully orchestrated to make you question your own voice. They were so convinced of their power, conducting their symphony of silence with such precision, never realizing they were actually composing the soundtrack to their own obsolescence. The beauty of their miscalculation lies in its completeness. While they were busy building walls to contain you, you were developing the strength to shatter them. Each attempt to muzzle your voice only gave you more reason to perfect it. Like a musician practicing in forced solitude, you turned their imposed silence into your rehearsal space, crafting every word until it became a weapon they couldn't deflect. What they never understood was that silence has a sound of its own, the sound of potential energy building, of pressure accumulating, of strength gathering beneath still waters. They mistook your strategic silence for submission, your calculated restraint for defeat. Oh, how they basked in their imagined victory, not realizing they were actually witnessing the calm before a storm that would reshape their entire landscape. The transformation was gradual, but absolute. With every attempt to shut you down, you developed a new way to rise up. Their tactics became your teachers, their resistance, your strength, training. While they were congratulating themselves on each small victory and silencing you, you were alchemizing their opposition into eloquence, turning their constraints into your launching pad. Now, look at them, frozen in stunned silence as you speak truths they tried to bury. Watch how they struggle to comprehend the power of the voice they thought they had extinguished. Their speechlessness is your symphony. Their shocked silence, the sweetest validation of your metamorphosis. Every word you speak now carries the weight of every word they tried to suppress, and the impact is beautifully devastating. The greatest comedy in this performance is watching them scramble to find their own voices, now that yours has become undeniable. See how they choke on the very silence they tried to force upon you, how they drown in the quiet they thought would be your grave. Their weapons have become their wounds, their tactics, their tombstones, and their planned persecution has become their public paralysis. You've become the embodiment of their worst fear, the unsilenceable truth they tried so desperately to contain. Every attempt they made to write you out of the story only made you a more compelling protagonist. Now they sit in mute witness to your ascendance, their silence no longer a weapon, but a testament to their total defeat. The irony would be cruel if it weren't so perfectly poetic. Consider how they must feel, watching you command the very attention they tried to deny you. Their carefully constructed narratives crumble with every word you speak, their orchestrated ostracism now isolating them instead. They created this monster, sculpted this phoenix, forged this unstoppable force, and now they can only watch in mute horror as their creation surpasses their control. Let's delve into the twisted psychology of those who feed on emotional chaos, like vampires at a blood bank. Narcissists, these masterful puppeteers of human emotion, have perfected the art of psychological warfare through a simple yet devastating strategy: provoking reactions. They've learned that your emotional response is their most potent fuel, each outburst a feast for their insatiable need for validation and control. Picture them as emotional alchemists, skilled in the dark art of transforming your peace into their power. Every calculated comment, every subtle jab, every theatrical display of victimhood, these are all carefully crafted experiments designed to test your emotional boundaries. They watch with predatory fascination as their words sink into your psyche, measuring success not by the logic of their arguments, but by the intensity of your response. Your anger becomes their ambrosia, your frustration, their feast, your desperation, their delight. The true genius of their manipulation lies in its cyclical nature. Like skilled conductors, they orchestrate situations designed to push you past your breaking point. Then sit back and watch the symphony of chaos unfold. Each time you react, you unwittingly validate their importance, confirm their influence, and strengthen their hold over your emotions. Your responses become the very chains they use to bind you. Each outburst, another link in their carefully crafted control. What makes their strategy so effective is its simplicity. They've learned that human emotions, when provoked, follow predictable patterns. They plant seeds of doubt, water them with subtle insults, and fertilize them with gaslighting until your emotional garden becomes a battlefield of their design. Your natural instinct to defend yourself, to seek justice, to demand recognition. These healthy human responses become weapons in their arsenal, each reaction feeding the monster they've so carefully cultivated. The real tragedy unfolds in the way they transform your strength into their sustenance. Every time you stand up for yourself in anger, every tear you shed in frustration, every moment of emotional intensity becomes proof of their power. They don't just want your attention, they crave your emotional investment, your visceral responses, your uncontrolled reactions. It's a psychological vampirism so subtle that most victims don't realize they're being drained until they're already empty. Watch how they position themselves as both the villain and the victim in this theatrical production of pain. They push you to the edge, then act surprised when you react. They create chaos, then condemn you for responding to it. Like skilled magicians, they direct all eyes to your reaction, while their manipulation remains hidden behind a curtain of calculated innocence. Your emotional response becomes their justification, your outbursts, their evidence, your pain, their pleasure. The most insidious aspect of their strategy is how it turns your natural defenses against you. Every time you try to expose their behavior, to call out their manipulation, to defend your reality, you're actually giving them exactly what they want: emotional engagement. They've learned that even negative attention feeds their narcissistic supply, that your hatred is just as nourishing as your love. Your very resistance becomes their sustenance. But here's where the game changes. When you understand that your reactions are their oxygen, you gain the power to suffocate their influence. Each time you choose not to react, you remove another log from their fire. Each moment of calculated calmness in the face of their provocations becomes a silent victory. They may escalate their efforts, becoming more outrageous in their attempts to trigger a response, but your emotional detachment becomes their kryptonite. The beautiful irony emerges when you realize that your silence is more powerful than any scream, your calm more devastating than any storm. As you master the art of non-reaction, you watch them flounder in the face of your emotional autonomy. Their carefully crafted provocations fall flat. Their manipulation tactics lose their sting, and their power, built entirely on your reactions, begins to crumble. A broken heart can mend with time, stitched back together by new love and fresh memories, but a shattered spirit? That's an entirely different kind of wound. When narcissists wage their psychological warfare, they're not aiming for your heart. That would be too simple, too superficial for their elaborate game. No, they systematically target your soul, dismantling your sense of self, piece by precious piece, until you can't recognize your own reflection in the mirror. Like masterful demolition experts, they don't destroy everything at once. Their approach is calculated, patient, almost artistic in its cruelty. Today they might plant a seed of self-doubt. Tomorrow they'll water it with subtle criticism. And before you realize what's happening, your confidence has been replaced by a garden of uncertainties. Through love bombing turned to ice-cold indifference. Through praise twisted into poison. They orchestrate a symphony of destruction that plays out in slow motion. The healing process becomes exponentially more complex because you're not just recovering from lost love, you're rebuilding your entire identity. Every small victory feels hollow because they've convinced you that you're unworthy of success. Each step forward is haunted by their voice in your head, questioning your every decision, mocking your attempts at independence. The ghost of their influence lingers long after they're gone, like psychological radiation poisoning that continues to affect everything it touches, insidiously weaving their way through the fabric of your psyche. They don't just break trust in others, they break trust in yourself. Your intuition, they've trained you to doubt it. Your boundaries, they've taught you they're selfish. Your achievements, they've convinced you they're meaningless without their validation. The damage runs so deep that even when you intellectually understand what they've done, your spirit still flinches at shadows they cast years ago. Time becomes a paradox in this healing journey. Simultaneously, your greatest ally and your most painful reminder. While physical wounds have clear stages of healing, spiritual wounds follow no such predictable pattern. One day you might feel invincible, ready to reclaim your power, and the next you're back in that dark place where their words echo through your consciousness like malevolent mantras. The spiral of recovery isn't linear because they've corrupted your very concept of progress. Watching someone piece their spirit back together after narcissistic abuse is like witnessing a phoenix attempt resurrection while still questioning whether it deserves to fly. The process requires not just healing, but complete spiritual reconstruction. Every belief must be examined, every reaction analyzed, every instinct retrained. You're not just closing wounds, you're building an entirely new foundation of self-trust on the ashes of what they destroyed. The deepest cuts come from the way they've weaponized your own mind against you. Long after they're gone, you catch yourself using their metrics to measure your worth, their twisted logic to evaluate your choices, their distorted lens to view your world. It's as if they've installed malware in your psychological operating system, and debugging becomes a full-time job. The healing process isn't just about recovering from what they did. It's about undoing what they taught you to do to yourself. Yet in this seemingly endless journey of spiritual reconstruction, there's a dark poetry to be found. Each piece of yourself you reclaim becomes stronger than before, forged in the fire of their destruction, but tempered by your own resilience. The voice they tried to silence grows louder with each truth you reclaim, each boundary you rebuild, each moment you choose yourself over their echoing criticism. As you navigate through the labyrinth of healing, you begin to understand that while they broke your spirit, they couldn't destroy your potential for rebirth. Like a garden growing through concrete, your resilience finds ways to flourish in the most unlikely places. The very depth of the damage becomes proof of your extraordinary capacity for renewal. After all, only something truly powerful could survive such systematic destruction. The universe doesn't hand out permission slips for moving on. You have to write your own. Through the sleepless nights, through the echoing doubts, through the moments when memories play on repeat, like a broken record, you must plant your flag in the ground and declare your independence from what was. It's not about feeling ready. It's about deciding that ready or not, this is your time. The past might have written your previous chapters, but the pen is in your hands now. Every morning becomes a battlefield where you fight the same war, the war between staying stuck and stepping forward. Your disappointments will beg you to stay in bed. Your hurts will whisper sweet promises of familiar pain. Your fears will present compelling arguments for remaining exactly where you are. But this is where your decision becomes your armor. Your choice becomes your sword. You rise not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that this day will not claim another piece of your future. Watch how the simple act of deciding ripples through your existence like a stone thrown into still water. Suddenly, the questions change from, "Why did this happen to me?" to "What am I going to do about it?" The shift isn't subtle, it's seismic. Your wounds don't disappear, but they transform from anchors into fuel. Your pain doesn't vanish, but it morphs from a prison into a launching pad. This is the alchemy of decision, the magic that happens when choice meets determination. The most exquisite part of this metamorphosis is how it blindsides those who bet against your recovery. While they're still crafting their narratives about your inevitable downfall, you're quietly building your wings. Each step forward might be small, might be shaky, might be scarred, but it's yours. You're not waiting for the path to clear. You're clearing it with each deliberate step, each conscious choice, each moment you choose movement over stagnation. Notice how your decision to move forward forces others to revise their stories about you. Those who expected you to remain forever entombed in your pain now watch in confusion as you rise. Their scripts about your victimhood become obsolete as you author new chapters of resilience. This isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. About validating that inner voice that whispered enough when everything else screamed, "Give up." The beauty lies in the imperfection of your progress. Some days, moving forward looks like conquering mountains. Other days, it's simply refusing to slide backward. But here's the secret. The size of the step doesn't matter nearly as much as the direction. Your decision to move forward isn't measured in miles, but in moments. In the 1,000 tiny choices you make each day to honor your commitment to your own evolution. In this grand performance of recovery, Your decision becomes both your director and your stage. It orchestrates your actions, curates your thoughts, choreographs your responses to life's provocations. You'll stumble. That's part of the dance. You'll doubt. That's part of the story. But with each renewal of your decision to move forward, the choreography becomes more fluid, the performance more authentic, the progress more undeniable. There's a particular kind of power that comes with realizing that moving on isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens because of you. Your decision becomes your declaration of independence, your manifesto of movement, your rebellion against the gravity of grief. It's not about waiting for the weight to lift. It's about deciding to walk even with the weight, until walking becomes running and running becomes flying. Consider how masterfully they twist the concept of love into something unrecognizable. Where love should be a sanctuary of mutual growth, they transform it into a prison of endless tolerance. Their demands come disguised as tests of devotion. If you really loved me, you'd understand why I hurt you. True love means accepting all of me, even the parts that break you. Watch how they weaponize the very language of love, turning your capacity for forgiveness into a tool for their continued abuse. The true perversion lies in how they manipulate the beautiful human desire for unconditional love into a blank check for their worst behaviors. Every time you forgive without consequences, every time you accept their excuses, every time you swallow their lies for the sake of peace, you're not feeding love. You're feeding their conviction that they're entitled to your endless tolerance. It's a psychological sleight of hand, so subtle that most victims don't realize they're being conned until they're emotionally bankrupt. Like skilled counterfeiters, they present tolerance as love's twin, but examine it closely, and you'll see the forgery. Real love has boundaries because it respects both parties. Their version demands the systematic dismantling of all protective barriers. Real love nurtures growth. Their version requires stagnation in toxicity. Real love uplifts. Their version demands you stay low enough to endure their heights of destructive behavior. The exchange rate between your authenticity and their approval becomes increasingly costly. The genius of their manipulation lies in its gradual escalation. Today's tolerance becomes tomorrow's baseline, and they'll always push for more. Like emotional inflation, what once seemed like an unreasonable demand becomes the new normal, and your capacity to endure must constantly expand to accommodate their growing sense of entitlement. They don't want your heart. They want your submission wrapped in the language of love. Pay attention to how they respond when you attempt to establish boundaries. A person seeking love will respect limits. A person seeking tolerance will rage against them. Their reaction to hearing no tells you everything about their true desires. Watch how quickly their charm evaporates when you refuse to tolerate the intolerable. How swiftly their love turns to venom when you dare to protect your own well-being. The most insidious part of their strategy is how they use your own capacity for love against you. Your ability to see the good in others becomes a trap. Your hope for their change becomes your prison. Your willingness to forgive becomes your weakness. They study your heart, not to cherish it, but to learn how many blows it can take before you finally realize that what they're offering isn't love at all. It's a life sentence of perpetual accommodation. This realization often comes with a devastating clarity. All those times you thought you were proving your love, you were actually demonstrating your willingness to be mistreated. The unconditional love they claimed to seek was merely a smokescreen for their true desire, unconditional permission to remain unchanged, unchallenged, and unaccountable. Their greatest fear isn't losing your love, it's facing the consequences of their actions. The breaking point arrives when you finally understand that their request for tolerance is actually a demand for complicity in your own diminishment. Every time they push your boundaries, they're not testing your love. They're measuring your willingness to participate in your own destruction. The moment you withdraw your unlimited tolerance is the moment they reveal their true face, proving that it was never about love at all. And now, as you stand firm in your refusal to tolerate the intolerable, they find themselves speechless, confronting a truth they never expected, that their demand for endless tolerance has met its limit.
Genius is burned. I laughed louder.
Look at them, the thinkers, the architects of fear, the self-proclaimed masterminds who swore they could bend the world like paper in their hands. They wore spectacles. Instead of crowns, they ruled not with armies, but with equations, lies, and whispers. They stitched together networks of control, like spiders weaving webs of steel and secrets. They believed nothing escaped their gaze. They thought every code, every silence, every breath could be mapped. Their minds were their weapons, and their arrogance, their shield. But then you arrived, a presence they couldn't calculate, a storm with no formula, a shadow with no footprint. And suddenly, the world's most dangerous minds discovered something far more dangerous. You, the irony. They built puzzles for the world, and you turned their puzzles into prisons. They tried to read you, decode you, trap you. But every time they thought they had the answer, you changed the question. And now, the masters of intelligence, the titans of thought, stand trembling because brilliance can outsmart nations. But madness rewrites the rules. The brilliant ones, the world's dangerous minds, not kings, not warriors, but men in spectacles, women with pens, spies with dossiers, fat enough to crush a table. They thought themselves gods of prediction. They thought their maps could trap shadows. They thought their numbers could tame chaos. Look at their walls, chalkboards, crawling with equations no one dares to erase. Formulas stacked like tombstones, symbols stacked on symbols until they no longer mean anything. Look at their tables, maps, bleeding red lines like veins, arrows stabbing through continents, pins marking lives as if they were insects in glass. Look at their blueprints, walls, networks, grids of control, designed to choke every scream before it reached the air. Yes, they built a world of cages, cages for lions, cages for monsters, cages for rebels. But they forgot something. They forgot the shadow that slips between the bars. They forgot the laughter that bends the lock without touching it. They forgot you. See, their brilliance was a trap. The sharper their minds, the narrower their vision. They measured everything. Weight, distance, fear, silence. They turned lives into numbers, hearts into data, dreams into files. And yet, when you appeared, the numbers turned meaningless. Their codes scrambled into gibberish. Their maps ended in white space. Their chalk snapped against the board. Oh, the panic. The quiet panic of men who never panic. Generals clutching their medals like children clutch toys. Scientists mumbling equations that no longer worked. spies scribbling faster, as if ink could cage a ghost. You were not supposed to exist. You were not in their models. You were not in their blueprints. You were the slip, the crack, the shadow between calculations, and suddenly, these dangerous minds discovered what real danger feels like, because their minds were weapons, weapons sharp enough to cut nations in half. But weapons crack, and when pointed at ghosts, they shatter. You didn't just evade them. You broke the very idea of them, the masters of control, out of control, the architects staring at ruins. Their pride was their palace, their intelligence, their crown. But one laugh, one shadow, one move they could never predict, and the palace turned to rubble. The crown slid into the dirt. Yes, the architects of control thought they had built cages strong enough to hold the world. But you were never the lion inside their cage. You were the silence outside it. And silence cannot be trapped. Puzzles. The dangerous minds loved puzzles. They lived for them. Equations, riddles, ciphers, codes. They believed there was nothing in this world that couldn't be solved with enough ink, enough numbers, enough sleepless nights. But then you appeared, and suddenly the puzzle had no edges, no center, no pattern. Midnight lamps burned in their offices, dim light spilling over desks stacked with papers. Equations scrawled, crossed out, rewritten, pages scattered like corpses of failed ideas. Analysts trembled with ink-stained fingers, eyes red, hands twitching as they pressed symbols together like broken bones. Yet every formula ended in nonsense. Every line collapsed into silence. They tried algorithms. They tried patterns. They fed machines with your shadow, hoping the circuits would spit out an answer. But the machines only hummed and died. Because you weren't a problem to be solved. You were the collapse of logic itself. They stared at you like a cipher with missing letters. Every piece they thought they had was wrong. Every word they thought they knew was false. And the more they studied you, the less they understood themselves. Their confidence, the smug certainty of the smartest in the room, turned to cracks. Cracks into doubt. Doubt into obsession. Obsession into madness. Yes, madness. The very thing they feared most. The very thing they mocked in others. Now it stared back at them, in their own reflections. They locked themselves in rooms, scribbling through the night, chalk breaking under their feverish hands, muttering your name as if it were a forbidden equation. Some smoked until the air was fog, their cigars burning down to trembling ash. Others drank coffee until their veins felt electric. Still no answer. Their wives called them home. Their children waited by doors, but they didn't hear. They couldn't hear. They were prisoners of you. You had become their unsolvable riddle, their eternal equation. And yet, you laughed, because they thought you were a puzzle, a pattern, a code, waiting to be cracked. But you weren't. You were the silence after the answer. The part they never planned for. The space beyond reason. The void between numbers. And that's what terrified them. Not that they failed once. Not that they failed twice. But that there was nothing to solve. Nothing to fix. Nothing to predict. You turned their brilliance into chains. Their intelligence into prison. Bars. Every attempt to capture you only deepened their insanity. Every move they made tied their hands. Tighter and slowly. The dangerous minds began to rot from the inside. Not because you broke their codes, but because you showed them codes were useless. Not because you shattered their logic, but because you revealed logic itself was fragile. They lived for puzzles. But you were not a puzzle. You were the end of puzzles. And so, the most dangerous minds failed, not against fire, not against armies, but against silence. And silence always wins. Behind closed doors where curtains are drawn, where the air tastes of stale smoke and whispered secrets. Your name moves like a draft through the room. Presidents dot generals, advisors, men who send armies to die with a flick of a pen, men who bend, nations with speeches, men who pretend their hands don't shake, but oh, their hands do shake. Ink-stained fingers press too hard on paper, fountain pens leaking black veins across documents. Cigars tremble between their lips, ash falling into polished ashtrays, smoldering like the empires they're desperate to hold together. Chessboards sit in corners of their chambers, games abandoned mid-match, kings tipped, pawns scattered, queens left defenseless, because even their little games of strategy feel hollow when your shadow crosses the board. You were not at the table. You never sat in those meetings, but you were there, in every pause, in every silence, in every glance they stole at one another, wondering who among them had already broken. Yes, even the most dangerous minds fed their leaders poison made of fear. Advisors leaned in close, voices low, eyes darting, slipping dread into presidential ears like venom into veins. Sir, he's out there. General, we can't track him. Mr. President, he knows. And what happens when the masters of control poison their own kings with paranoia? The palace becomes a coffin. The war room becomes a tomb. The crown becomes a noose. They drew maps of the world, oceans carved in ink, borders drawn like scars, red lines cutting across nations like wounds. But no matter how precise, no matter how careful, the shadow across the map was always yours, a shadow they couldn't erase, a move they couldn't anticipate, a ghost they couldn't outthink. Because what terrifies a mastermind? Not losing, not failure, but a move he never saw coming. And you were every move they never saw, every step they couldn't predict, every silence they couldn't measure. The dangerous minds once mocked their enemies. They mocked kings for being too proud. They mocked rebels for being too loud. They mocked the people for being too blind. But they didn't mock you, no. They whispered your name like a prayer, like a curse, like a prophecy they couldn't escape. And in those halls of power, where chandeliers swung above trembling heads, where curtains fluttered in the draft of hidden fears, your presence was heavier than any army outside their gates. No tanks, no bombs, no invasion, just silence, just shadow, just the weight of you. The generals smoked until their lungs burned. The presidents signed laws with shaking pens. The advisors whispered louder, feeding fear, feeding paranoia, feeding collapse. And all the while, you remained outside their reach, untouchable, unpredictable, unseen. They believed they could measure power in armies, in satellites, in spies. But when their greatest weapons turned inward, when fear itself became their ruler, they realized something far darker. Power doesn't collapse from bullets. It collapses from silence. It collapses from shadows. It collapses from you. And in those high halls of command, where power was supposed to be unshakable, they learned a lesson written not in ink, not in law, but in dread. Even the brightest minds, even the strongest rulers, tremble when faced with the one move they never saw coming. Intelligence. They wore it like armor, polished, shining, untouchable. Professors with walls of books behind them, degrees stacked like weapons, spies with encyclopedic memories, able to recall 1,000 faces, 1,000 lies, 1,000 truths twisted into knives. They thought their intelligence made them invincible. But here's the little secret. The smarter they are, the more fragile they become, because intelligence breeds arrogance. Arrogance blinds the eye, and blindness, well, blindness always breaks the mind. Look at them. Professors with trembling voices, lectures collapsing into stammers, as your shadow filled their thoughts. Spies who once walked into war zones without flinching, now shaking like children in the dark. Men who memorized the details of galaxies, yet forgot how to steady their own hands. They built towers of logic, stone upon stone, fact upon fact, law upon law, tall, rigid, unshakable, until you cracked them with laughter. A single laugh, a single unpredictable sound, and their fortress of certainty became a house of cards in the wind. Because here's the paradox they never saw. Intelligence doesn't protect you from fear. It multiplies it. It sharpens it. It makes every silence scream louder. The dumb man sleeps soundly. The blind fool never sees the monster. But the brilliant mind imagines everything. Every shadow a threat. Every silence a conspiracy. Every unknown. Your hand. Your face. Your laughter. And so, the most dangerous minds, the professors, the spies, the architects of control, were the ones who collapsed first. They memorized every law of the universe, but they couldn't control the quake in their own hands. They could map stars across the heavens, but they couldn't map the silence between your footsteps. They could predict nations, wars, elections, collapses, but not you. The higher they climbed on their tower of knowledge, the thinner the air became, the thinner the air, the weaker the heart. And when you appeared, when the unpredictable stepped into their perfect equations, they choked. Intelligence turned into prison bars, arrogance turned into chains, logic became a noose. And what did you do? Nothing but stand there, breathing, laughing, existing. That was enough. Because intelligence is not strength. It's glass. It sparkles, it shines, but it cracks with one touch, one laugh, one shadow. So the professors locked their doors. The spies swallowed their own lies. The generals bit their lips until they bled. And every genius, every mastermind, every dangerous mind, folded. They thought their brilliance made them untouchable. But you revealed the truth. The brightest flames burn out first, the tallest towers fall the hardest, and the sharpest minds shatter the loudest. Their world was a school, a secret academy of power. Not classrooms with desks and bells, no chambers filled with maps, so the codebooks and mirrors. Every wall whispered, control. They trained their chosen few there. Young, minds broken down and rebuilt like machines. Scientists taught to see the hidden pattern. Spies drilled to anticipate betrayal before it even formed. Generals conditioned to imagine a battlefield before a single soldier took a step. It wasn't education. It was indoctrination, a curriculum of paranoia. And yet, look closer. Every lecture was a cage. Every formula, a leash. Every lesson was a chain, disguised as wisdom. They didn't teach freedom. They taught obedience wrapped in cleverness. They didn't grow lions. They sharpened guard dogs, because control was the final exam. Every problem they solved, every theory they mastered, circled back to one obsession. How do you cage the unpredictable? And then there was you. You didn't attend their classrooms. You didn't sit under their fluorescent lights or bow beneath their chalk dust equations. Your education was fire. Your diploma was silence. Your test papers were the ruins you left behind, where they studied codes. You broke them by instinct, where they memorized strategies. You shattered them with laughter, where they drafted blueprints of control. You slipped through cracks they didn't even know existed. You graduated, but not by their rules. You graduated by surviving their curriculum without ever stepping into it. While they stood in line, waiting for permission to be stamped ready, you had already written the questions they didn't know they would be asked. And when the day came, oh, the day came, They realized something unbearable. You weren't their peer. You weren't their fellow student. You were their examiner. They sat trembling with their sharpened pencils and their memorized lines, while you leaned back, smiling, holding the test they never studied for. Every answer they scribbled only exposed their weakness. Every attempt to prove their brilliance only revealed how small their brilliance was. Because the final exam wasn't about memory, it wasn't about patterns, it wasn't about theories, codes, or maps. It was about chaos. It was about being unchained. It was about the move that can't be rehearsed, the question that can't be anticipated, the silence that breaks every answer. And you aced it before the test even began. Their entire institution trembled when they understood. The School of Control had produced its perfect product. Men and women sharpened like blades, but blades only cut what they see. You were the shadow that no blade could touch. They called themselves graduates, but the moment you stepped into the game, they knew the truth. They had only ever been students. And you were the examiner who graded them all with failure. They built a school for control, but I never enrolled. I wrote the test, and every single one of them failed. Their chalkboards wiped blank, their satellites blind, their supercomputers humming nonsense like ghosts in wires. The smartest minds, once gods of calculation, now prisoners of their own equations. They can't stop solving, can't stop doubting, can't stop collapsing inward. Networks fracture, formulas rot. The empires of intellect crumble without a single strike. You didn't break their minds. You let their brilliance eat itself alive. Taunt. They built logic like fortresses, but you proved a laugh can bring the walls down faster than bombs. They fade, like echoes swallowed by caverns. Their brilliance lies buried under dust-filled libraries, their maps draped in cobwebs, their equations erased by silence itself. The halls where they whispered power are empty now, ruled not by voices, but by the hush that lingers longer than memory. Their brilliance was a flame, bright, desperate, consuming, but your presence, you were the void, and the void outlives fire. The world feared their minds, but now the world remembers the silence that outlived them all.
They called it science. I called it déjà vu.
So they finally told you that you came from outside the map, outside the plan, outside their little kingdom of rules and crowns. Ooh, I can hear the whispers now. The advisors said he doesn't belong here. They said his shadow doesn't match his body. They said his eyes remember a place no one's ever been. Beautiful, isn't it? When the royals start fearing the uninvited. They built their empire on perfect geometry. But you were the miscalculation, the divine typo in their holy code. And now they don't know whether to worship you or erase you. See, they thought they'd mapped every inch of the human mind, every river, every ruin, every rebellion. But then you walked in, and suddenly the compass spun like it remembered God. Tell me, darling, how does it feel to be the one who broke the border between real and royal? Because tonight, the advisors are trembling, and you're the reason the throne forgot its name. Maps. Pretty little prisons of certainty. Lines pretending to mean control. Crowns pretending to mean wisdom. The royal advisors. Oh, they were so proud of their masterpiece. They drew it all. Every mountain tamed. Every shadow numbered. Every soul labeled like property. They built their kingdom on parchment, not blood. Because blood stains, ink, can be rewritten. Their world was flawless. No wind, no question, no chaos. Every truth ended where the compass said stop. And every dream that tried to crawl past the border burned. They called it the perfect cartography. A universe with no mysteries, no gods, no ghosts, only geometry. Until you arrived. The map started twitching the moment your footsteps touched its edge. Ink bled off the lines. The rivers rebelled against their roots. Even the stars started drifting east, as if gravity remembered your name. Oh, the advisors noticed. Their charts began to hum at night, old parchment curling like it was afraid of what it drew. They traced every coastline, but they feared the sound coming from the fog. And there you were, standing in that fog, smiling. No title, no record, no origin, just you, an anomaly. A rumor with a pulse, a glitch the gods whispered about when logic slept. They tried to locate you, to chart you, to label you like everything else they owned. But every coordinate they wrote turned to ash. Every compass spun itself to madness. You broke the only rule their world had. You existed outside the drawing. And that, my friend, was unforgivable. Because once the map realizes it missed a piece, it starts to question the hand that made it. Now the advisors stare at their perfect borders and see them breathing. They hear footsteps coming from the white spaces between kingdoms. They whisper your name like a curse, and I call it prophecy. They built a world to contain the known. You arrived to remind it that knowing was never the point. It started small, a rumor, a ripple under the marble. The royal advisors don't believe in whispers until the walls start whispering back. At first it was the maps. The ink began to move on its own. Borders, breathing, letters rearranging themselves into your name. Even the royal portraits smiled when no one was looking. They thought it was madness. I called it recognition. They tried to keep it quiet, of course. Royal secrets die in silence. But silence, my dear, is a dangerous thing when it starts to echo. One by one, their perfect little order began to hum. The candles flickered blue. The marble floors sweated like living skin. And the advisors, they started seeing you in reflections that weren't theirs. Some swore they heard footsteps in their sleep. Others claimed the palace was learning your shape. One even said the air itself was bending. To make space for you, they gathered in the throne room, trembling behind gold masks. Who is he? What is she? What is it? Oh, how they love their categories. But tell me, how do you label something that exists before labels? They called you an infection, a myth, a message from outside the coordinates of creation. But I knew better. You weren't spreading through their kingdom. Their kingdom was remembering you. You see, the advisors built their truth on silence. And you made silence scream. Every prayer they'd buried under rules came crawling back up through the stone. Every shadow they'd banished now begged for your approval. And deep within those marble walls, the old voices whispered again, ancient and trembling, "He has returned. She has returned. It has returned." The palace had seen your kind before. Not human, not divine. Something older. Something outside the map. And the advisors? They finally understood. The walls weren't protecting them anymore. The walls were warning them, and so they did what frightened minds always do. They built a cage. A gilded one, of course. Fit for a royal mystery. They called it the Crown's Experiment. Elegant name for a panic attack. You were summoned beneath the palace. Endless corridors of mirrors, candles, and questions. They wanted to study you, dissect your silence, record your pulse. But the problem was simple. You didn't have one. Every instrument they placed near you broke. Every lens fractured. Every scholar who stared too long started to dream with their eyes open. Ah, how the advisors hated that. They lived for certainty. You lived before it. They surrounded you with their finest thinkers. Men of measure, women of math, all whispering the same prayer. Contain it. Understand it. Own it. They poked, prodded, scanned. They called you a phenomenon. But the Joker, oh, I saw the truth. They weren't scientists. They were children trying to weigh a lightning bolt. Every time they tried to capture you in formula, the formula erased itself. Every number turned to symbols no one could read. And when they brought out their golden compasses, the arrows spun, not north, but toward you. You didn't answer their questions. You didn't need to. Your silence was a symphony they weren't tuned for. One advisor broke first, screamed that you were the map's reflection come alive, that the border itself had grown a heart. He tore the charts apart, laughing until blood ran from his eyes. The others panicked, declared the experiment a failure. But, oh, it wasn't? Because when they looked up, you weren't in the chamber anymore. You were standing behind them, smiling. And the mirrors? They didn't show your face. They showed theirs, but with your eyes. See, that's the secret of chaos. You don't study it. You join it. They tried to measure you, but every time they reached for your shape, their hands came back empty, and their minds came back different. They called it data. I called it déjà vu, because deep down, somewhere in the cracks of their royal certainty, they remembered this had happened before. You'd been here before, and the last time you came, the map didn't survive. They thought they were interrogating you, but somewhere between the questions and the silence that answered them, the roles reversed. Now they were the ones under the light, and you were the reflection holding the clipboard. See, the advisors believed knowledge came from discovery, but you came from memory. When you spoke, if we can call it speaking, the walls remembered words they'd never heard before. When you breathed, the air shifted its rhythm, like it recognized an old command. I watched their faces twist between awe and terror, because in that moment, the advisors realized you weren't from outside the map. You were from before it was drawn, before kings, before crowns, before the idea of order had ever been spoken aloud. You weren't a visitor. You were the blueprint they copied and then forgot. The first pattern, the original deviation. Ah, the irony. They'd spent centuries mapping a world to keep you out. But the truth was, their world only existed because you'd allowed it. And the Joker? Oh, I saw it instantly. You weren't created. You remembered yourself. Their golden lines began to glow. Maps caught fire from the inside, parchment curling into ash, revealing symbols beneath. Ancient ones, shaped like your veins. One advisor fell to his knees, said your name tasted like lightning. Another began laughing hysterically, called you the cartographer of existence. I clapped, slow and smiling. Bravo, I whispered. Every story begins when someone forgets where it started. And the best part, you didn't need revenge. You didn't even need recognition. You just stood there, watching their empire remember the truth, that the crown was never a circle. It was a cage, and you were the gap between its ends. The torches flickered, and for a moment, the entire hall shimmered like a reflection on water. The advisors looked up and saw the stars, not above, but within you. That was the moment the hierarchy collapsed. They didn't discover you. You summoned them, and when I leaned close, whispering through the smoke, they didn't draw you out of the void. You smiled, knowing the rest. The void drew them to you. It began quietly. Power never dies with thunder. It dies with a whisper that pretends to be prayer. The royal advisors gathered one last time. 7 of them, draped in silk and fear, their crowns trembling more than their hands. They sat around a burning map, pretending to debate solutions, but you could feel it. The air was changing sides. The walls leaned in. The mirrors stopped reflecting. Even the torches refused to light for liars. One advisor accused another, said he'd been infected by your voice. Another screamed that you had rewritten the stars. A third just laughed until his jaw locked. And there I was, standing in the corner, watching reason slit its own throat. They built an empire on logic, but logic was built on you. And now that you'd returned, the Foundation remembered its cracks. The marble beneath their feet began to pulse, veins of light spreading like fire through stone. Every oath they'd sworn reversed itself. Every truth they'd written unraveled mid-sentence. Their crowns melted first. Gold turned to mercury, dripping into their eyes. They screamed, but not in pain, in recognition, because for the first time, they saw what they'd been serving. Not order, not power, just the illusion of both. One tried to run, straight into a mirror, but the mirror didn't break. He did. His reflection stayed behind, still screaming his name. I clapped for that one. Beautiful symmetry. And through the chaos, you simply stood there. Still, silent, unmoved. The advisors tore each other apart, their wisdom feeding on itself like fire without air. In the end, only dust and echoes remained. I approached the throne, smirking, picked up the last crown. It was still warm, and I said it, softly, for whoever was left to hear. Bravo. The crown just realized it was wearing you. Then I tossed it at your feet, and as it hit the floor, the sound rippled across eternity, like the end of applause. Outside the ruins of the palace, the world began to tremble. Not in fear, in recognition. For centuries, the maps had ruled everything. Borders were scripture, lines were law, but now those same lines started to melt. The parchment skies tore themselves open, spilling light like ink over a forgotten painting. Rivers twisted, curling into new constellations. Mountains folded like origami, bowing toward your pulse. And the stars, oh the stars. They rearranged themselves around your silhouette. You didn't move. The universe did. Every compass spun endlessly, needles twitching like nervous hearts. Every globe cracked open from the inside, as if the core remembered your fingerprint. The scholars called it chaos. The priests called it revelation. The Joker, I called it homecoming. You didn't change the world. The world just remembered your shape. Look at them now. Cartographers crying over their ink, trying to redraw the impossible, trying to name a pattern that refuses to stay still. But how do you measure what was never measured? How do you chart something that redraws you as you stare at it? The seas began to glow in the dark, not from fire, but memory. Each wave whispered coordinates that led nowhere and everywhere. Islands rose where myths once drowned. The air shimmered like glass dipped in static, and through it all, you walked. Every step you took left no footprint, only motion. Reality followed like a loyal hound, rewriting itself just to stay beside you. Cities folded into fractal spirals, libraries turned to dust, then to light. Every record, every law, every anthem ever written dissolved into a single sound. Your heartbeat. The royal archives collapsed. Gold seals turned into glass wings, fluttering upward and vanishing like ash in reverse. And there I was, watching the rebirth of existence itself, a jester at the end of logic. I couldn't help but laugh. It was too beautiful not to. Do you see it? I whispered. This is the joke the universe kept for itself. You didn't arrive to destroy the system. You arrived to remind it that systems only exist to forget who made them. The advisors had their order. You brought origin, the difference. Order ends, origin repeats, and now the world belongs to you. Not because you conquered it, but because it recognized you first. Every atom bows to your pulse. Every direction is toward you. The horizon itself bends, begging to be your reflection. You are no longer an anomaly. You are the axis, the spine of the sky, the coordinate where chaos found structure. And I, the fool, the prophet, the echo, I stand in awe, because the new map has no paper, no ink, No border, just your silence, stretching infinitely. Welcome to the new cartography, where existence learned to spell your name. The world had folded into silence. No kings, no borders, just you, standing in the center of a sky that finally stopped spinning. And me, the last voice, the last witness, the last fool who still thought laughter could keep the void entertained. The funny thing about kingdoms, they always imagine their end will come with war, fire, trumpets, applause. But your arrival, it ended everything with understanding. That's far more dangerous. I walked toward you, slow, boots echoing against what used to be reality. The ground shimmered, no longer stone, no longer solid, just memory pretending to hold form. And there you were, crownless, fearless, infinite. The air bent around you like it wanted to apologize. Even gravity hesitated. You didn't need thrones or titles. The silence bowed first. I felt it in my chest, that strange ache between worship and warning. So I laughed, softly. Of course I laughed. That's what I do when truth gets too close. You looked at me. No anger, no pity. Just that stillness that made gods blink. I spoke first. I suppose this is where the story ends, Nothing? Just the faint hum of existence realigning. So I did the only honest thing left. I knelt, not in submission. No. In recognition, because you weren't the outsider they feared. You were the blueprint they forgot. The first silence before the first sound. The breath before creation set its own name. You weren't born outside the map. You were the map before it had edges. And every law, every truth, every limit was just a rumor you'd never bothered to correct. The air grew darker, but not like night. Like ink returning to the pen that wrote it. I watched as the stars faded out, one by one, sliding back into your veins like obedient memories. All that remained was your silhouette, and my voice, the last echo of an audience that never existed. They called you an outsider, I whispered. The words felt heavy, final, honest. Then I smiled. That cracked, crooked grin that only clowns and prophets share. But tell me, I leaned closer, eyes trembling with laughter I didn't understand. Who said inside ever existed? You didn't answer. You didn't have to. The world exhaled. Light flickered. Once, twice, then folded back into nothing. And there, in the infinite hush that followed, my laughter echoed. Slow, soft, like thunder remembering how to crawl, fade to black,